No one there knew that one man's story would bring up the most important questions about faith in that faraway place. There wasn't any fighting or chaos that could be seen, but one of the most interesting and important spiritual fights in human history was going on in the unseen world. An honest man who is respected for having a perfect character would go through a trial that not many people could handle. It would start up in heaven, where decisions about the future are made. But is it possible for someone to stay loyal even when they have nothing? Is there such a thing as true loyalty if there is no self-interest? Contrary to what many people think, the answers to these questions did not come from religious books or motivational talks. They came from a man named Job's silent pain. We meet a rare figure at the beginning of the story, someone who not only believed in God, but also respected him very much. Job wasn't known for being smart, strong in battle, or successful in politics or philosophy. He was brilliant because he was honest. Plus, he was good and careful to stay away from all kinds of bad things. In addition, his life was balanced and harmonious. He had a loving family, happy children, lots of money, and a great name among the men of the East. 7,000 sheep grazed while he watched over them. 3,000 camels crossed deserts in his honor, 500 yoke of oxen tilled his fields, and the same number of horses finished off his huge estate. His employees, workers, and attendants all looked up to him. His children had feasts and parties, calling each other to share happiness and friendship. Those days were full of celebrations all the time. But very far away, in areas that humans can't see, the Creator was talking with an accused being. Heaven was asked, "Does Job really fear you? Or is his loyalty a result of how well off he is? What if you took away his children, his things, and his health? Would he still serve you?" There were no words in the answer. It came when Job's life fell apart all of a sudden. Everything broke down in one day. One piece of news came in. His cows had been stolen. Another one. Fire had killed all of his sheep. Another one. His horses were taken. One last terrible thing. All of his children had died at once while they were celebrating with him. Even so, Job said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." It was a sad but honest statement. The pain did not end there, though. He was sick with boils, his skin was hurt, and his body was in pain. In her grief, his wife told him to curse God and kill himself. Friends came up to him and told him poisonous lies that made it sound like Job earned what he was going through. It seemed like God was very quiet. But that quiet was where the real test was put to the test. When the Creator finally showed up, he didn't give answers. Instead, he asked, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" It's not just about pain in Job's story. It's about how far faith can go, how fair heaven is, and how a broken heart reacts to things that can't be explained. In the end, the good man kept quiet in front of God, not because he gave up, but because he respected God. Take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like before we continue with this great story. We tell stories here that make our faith stronger and help us see that our lives have a meaning, even when things are hard. Tell someone who needs hope about this word if it moved you. Also, please leave a super thanks if you want to help this work. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your gift. Thank you so much for your help. We'll keep going on our trip today. Job was not only a good person, but also a caring father who knew what was going on in his children's hearts. As a kind of spiritual shield, he would get up early every time the party days were over and make a sacrifice for each of his 10 children. Not just to be polite, but because they want to. He thought that maybe they had hurt the Most High while they were happy and didn't even know it. There was no fear behind this behavior. It came from a deep love for what they saw. While this honest man walked straight on earth, something was moving in a different world. A meeting was called in heaven, and the sons of God came to stand in front of Jehovah. The enemy showed up among them out of the blue. As a watcher of people, Satan arose with charges. He said Job was honest only because he wanted to help himself, implying that his honesty was a direct result of God's protection and wealth bestowing upon him. Once that happened, he was told he could touch everything Job owned. The accused didn't wait around. After planning his evil scheme, he set out to destroy everything that kept Job calm. And in just one day, the East's most moral man would have his life ripped apart by violence and killing. As they always did, the 10 brothers got together at the house of his oldest son to eat and drink. These were times of getting to know each other, laughing and being together. But something strange happened. So strong was the wind from the desert that it hit the house so hard that it fell on the young guys. They didn't make it. The news was the last blow to Job's spirit after a string of losses that had already destroyed him. His words were not profane, and he did not curse the sky. He tore his robe, shaved his head, and then fell to the ground. But it wasn't to be sad. It was to worship. He said, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away." His eyes were filled with tears and his heart was broken. The Lord's name is blessed. His loyalty stayed the same, even though he was crushed by grief. He didn't say God was to blame. His quiet was stronger than all of my reasons put together. His confession was a live proof of what the woman said. But that was only the start. At the right time, a new meeting was called at the top. The children of God showed up again, and Satan was there again. "Have you thought about my servant Job?" Jehovah asked the accused sternly. "No one else on earth is like him. He is honest, holy, respects me, and avoids bad things. He is still firm after everything that has happened." The devil then said, "Skin for skin. A man will give up everything for his life. If you touch his skin, he might curse you in front of everyone." The request was bold, and the goal was bad. Again, God agreed to the test, but there was one catch. No one had to die. Heaven looked. Earth was still. And Job, who didn't know it yet, became the main character in a fight that wasn't just about him, but also about how honest people are with God. The charge was clear. If a man's body is hurt, he loses allegiance. Satan thought that bodily pain could change the heart of even the cleanest person. He was given leave again, but this time there was a problem that could not be solved. He could touch Job's body, but not kill him. That's why Job got sick with a quiet anger. From head to toe, he had open scars called ulcers that burned all the time. His body was weak, ugly, and full of sores. It used to be strong and dignified. He sat in the ashes like someone looking for safety in the wreckage of their own pride. He scraped his cuts with a broken piece of pottery to try to make them feel better. But it didn't work. His body was a battlefield, and the pain never seemed to end. When his wife saw this sad picture, she couldn't stand to see the man she loved falling apart in pain. She felt a strong urge to rebel. Do you still stick to your word? What good does your kindness do? Take a look at what's left. Just swear at God to end this pain. But Job, even though he was in a lot of pain, said, "You talk like a woman and don't understand. Will God only give us good things and not bad things?" Even when he was sick, or when his wife was telling him she was sorry, Job did not protest. His lips stayed clean. He had doubts, but his faith did not break. And that, once more, shut the accused up high. People did notice Job's silence, though. Epiphar, Bildad, and Zophar, 3 old friends, heard about the terrible event. They got up and came from far away. They didn't come to judge, but to help. However, as they got closer, they barely recognized the friend who had once been a sign of honor and greatness. They couldn't recognize the man in front of them because he was hurt and covered in ashes. He looked more like he was dying than living. They were shocked by what they saw. They ripped their clothes, spit on each other, and sobbed out loud. They were polite and sat down next to him on the ground. No one was brave enough to speak. They did nothing but sit there in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. Job was going through so much pain that any words of comfort would have been meaningless. It was a shared grief and pain that was shown in silence. It looked like time stopped back then. Friends of Job never took their eyes off of him, and no one dared to speak out in pain. And even though the good man's body was weak, he still had a flame inside him. The words that were stuck in Job's throat were not words of defiance against God. as his enemy wanted them to be. Instead, they were words of frustration from a person who had had enough. Job finally spoke up at the end of the long week of silence. And what he said was not a sin against God. It wasn't a prayer against God. It was the start of a flood of feelings that had been building up. The hurt good man wouldn't deny his faith, but he would show how much pain was in his heart. That breaking of the quiet wasn't a charge at heaven. It was just words that were coming out. Job didn't curse God. He cursed the day he came into the world. Through his pain, he wished that he had never been born. Or why did I not die while I was still in the womb? Or why didn't I die at birth, he asked himself. Things in life that used to be a sign of goodness now seemed like they were too heavy to carry. If that were true, I would be at ease now. I want to sleep soundly. For him, the light that used to shine on his house now only showed how much pain he was in. He thought about why people whose souls were already in terrible pain were given life. Why does the breath of those who want to die last longer? Job didn't look for logical answers. His only wish was for the pain to end. My groans are the only voice I know, and my tears are what keep me alive. It was terrible that I didn't have any rest or peace. It was a real, honest reaction, a cry from a heart that was deeply broken. This was not a religious talk. That cry came from someone who had lost everything and now wanted to lose even their mind. Job didn't curse the name he so respected even when he was in this state. He was in pain because of life, not because of the eternal one. When his friends heard these words, they knew the time had come. Eliphaz of Teman was the first person to speak up. He looked like the oldest of the three and might have been the smartest. "If we talk to you, will it be too heavy for you?" he asked with some care, but a strong heart. "You have always been the one to cheer up the sad and boost the tired hands. You trip and fall when it touches you, though. Have you forgotten that no one who was innocent has ever died?" Eliphaz's words sounded like comfort, but they were really harsh. He seemed to be saying that no one should suffer for no reason. Also, if Job was in pain now, it was because of something he did. Those who cause wrongdoers to suffer. We don't know what you did wrong, but I think you should turn to God. Make your case to him. He does amazing things and saves people who are in trouble. Maybe you will be healed if you humble yourself. That hurt more than it helped, though. Job tried to listen, but every word hurt him more than the last. He said, "You came to comfort me, but what you said hurt me more. You blame me without any proof. Tell me what I did wrong. I tried to live a good life. My life wasn't long and was hard. What wrongdoing did I do that made God so angry with me?" Job's soul went back and forth between hopelessness and determination. He wanted to know what was going on, but he didn't believe the charges that were being made behind closed doors. He could handle the pain better if there was a clear reason for it, but the fact that there was none made everything even worse. It would make me feel better if God would kill me right away. I would know that the pain was over. Talking to someone should have been a release, but it turned into a fight between a man in pain and a friend with cold certainty. Job didn't say that God wasn't in charge, but he also wouldn't accept that his terrible situation was caused by a mistake that no one knew about. His words weren't meant to make people feel sorry for him, they were meant to get justice. Bildad the Shuhite stood up after Eliphaz's words. His tone wasn't as passionate but was more firm. He didn't talk from experience. Instead, he did it with the cold confidence of someone who sticks to old stories. He had a good reason. God is fair. Heaven couldn't be to blame if something went wrong. Job, how long are you going to keep saying that? Does God the Most High mess up justice? If your kids died, it was because they did wrong. They had to pay for what they did. None of the rules could be broken for Bildad. The reasoning was always the same. If the good do well and the bad do poorly, then those who suffer are getting what they deserved. But if you are truly good and pure, and if you cry out to God in sincerity, He will rebuild your house and make your righteousness grow again. Trust in the knowledge that the past has given us. God does not reject good people, but He also does not support bad people. Once more, Job wasn't hit by swords, but by words that cut deep. Not only was he in pain and missed his kids, but he was also being judged by people who used ideology as a weapon instead of sympathy. He didn't stay quiet, though. Yes, I understand that God is fair. But what can people say to him? I couldn't answer any of his questions, no matter how hard I tried. He controls the oceans, the sky, and the mountains. How could I, being so small, defend myself in his eyes? Job did not say that God was not great. He was upset about the loss of purpose. Even if I were not guilty, what I said would condemn me. Even if I tell him I'm good, he will still judge me wrong. Both good people and bad people are killed in the same way. It doesn't seem fair. What makes the people who walk the right way different from the people who live in sin? Things were getting more and more stressful. It was Zophar, the Naamathite, who spoke up next. His speech was also the worst. There were no spare parts. For him, Job was trying to make sense of things that didn't make sense. Do you think what you say will make men quiet? That what you teach is right, and that God sees you as clean? If only God could talk to you, you'd know that he punished you less than you deserve. If you want things to get better, give up doing bad things and say you're sorry. Maybe you will find kindness. Job paid attention, but his spirit was against him. That wasn't kindness. It was charges that were passed off as advice. Empty words. This speech has been played for me many times. You think you're smart, as if you were the only one who could understand. But I can also understand. I'm not less important than you. When you talk to me, it's like you don't know how powerful God is. You do know that's not what this is about, right? There were wounds in Job's body and in his soul. He was crushed by both his losses and the fact that the people who should have helped him didn't get it. The people who came to comfort him now heaped opinions, assumptions, and empty theologies on top of him. They hadn't asked him what was bothering him. No one had thought about the mystery of pain that can't be explained. And there, in the ashes and ruins, Job not only put up with the pain, but he also refused to be defined by people who had never been through such pain. When Job looked around, all he saw was quiet and fear. People who he used to call friends now seemed to laugh at his pain. I used to cry out to God and be heard, he said. They laugh at me. I think they would talk badly about me if they were in my shoes. But if I were you, I wouldn't do that either. I would feel sorry for them. His heart was hurt by both the terrible event that had happened in his life and the fact that the people who should have been there for him with kind words had left him. If I saw someone who was going through the same thing I was, I wouldn't accuse them. My words would calm them and lessen their pain, not make it worse. You left me alone, tired, and only a shadow of the man I used to be. There was a lot of loneliness. Job didn't feel full inside. My skin is scarred and my body is tired. I'm all out of strength. It feels like even my bones are crying with me. Now, he only looked at the Eternal One. I cry before God because he is the only place where my pain fits. You, who were with me, have turned your backs on me. But God, maybe he will hear me. It was hard to remember the good times that had been. Those were my days, and the dreams I had in my heart with them. It looks like the only thing that is certain for me now is the grave. My heart is broken and my strength is fading. The last bit of hope I had was buried with those who are already asleep in death. In the dark, I prayed to the Father. In the worm-filled dirt, I called out to Mother. Still, there was something in Job's words that didn't make sense. There was a spark of confidence that would not go out, even though his health, his friends, and his view of justice were all against him. Where is my hope? Who can see it in me? He asked himself. Surprisingly, he then said, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he will stand on the dust in the end. There was more to it than a wish. There was determination. Job didn't know when or how, but he was sure that God would defend him in some way. I will still see God, even if my skin is burned and I die. Not through someone else's eyes, but these ones. Even though it breaks my heart, I will wait for him. The person whose body was covered in death was kept alive by an unseen shore. Job didn't know how the Most High worked, but he trusted that he would be true to his word. His pain didn't get in the way of his hope. He didn't let his hope get in the way of seeing the truth. He wouldn't give in to the idea that his pain was caused by a secret sin. His honesty wasn't a deal. It was a matter of belief. So, after all of Job's friends' charges, he stood up with honor and made his last case, not to persuade them, but to say in front of God and heaven what he really believed. With my eyes, I made a promise. They haven't been able to go off. My life has been good. It was more than just a speech that he gave. It was a faith-based action. Job stayed true to himself even though he didn't understand why God was silent or why he was in so much pain. Even though everything seemed to say otherwise, he knew he wasn't alone. Job did not give up. His eyes used to be sad because he was hurt, but now they were proud. Even though he was tired, his voice had the strength of someone who knew who they were in God's eyes. How could I look at a virgin in a dirty way? May God put me on fair scales if I ever lied, gave in to greed, or did something wrong. He will see that I was honest. Job wasn't just tempted by things he could see. He talked about things that no one could see from the heart. If I wished for another man's wife in secret, or waited at the door of someone else's house, they should judge me. Let it be known, if I didn't hear the cries of my slaves or cared about the pain of those in need. This did not happen, though. I never felt happy when my enemy lost. I never turned away from anyone who was alone. If I put my trust in gold or bragged about being rich, may the Eternal correct me. I didn't do any of these things, though. He said in a strong voice, "This is my last word. I sign this in front of heaven. Should someone say something bad about me, the Almighty should write it down himself. I'm ready. Anyone who wants to fight me should do so. I'm not going to hide from the truth." When his three friends heard these words, they didn't say anything else. They had no more things to say, but Job stood his ground, even though he was hurt. Not only was the quiet uncomfortable, it also had no power. But that break wouldn't mean the end of the conversation. There was another man among them, more youthful, a careful watcher. Elihu was his name. He was the son of Barachel and came from the Buz family. He had been there the whole time, waiting in silence for his turn. Because the other people were older than him, he had kept quiet. He became angry when he saw that the elders had stopped talking and that none of them had clearly disagreed with Job. Elihu began, "I am young and you are old. That's why I didn't say anything. I thought that time would make me wise. I hoped that the experience would make its point clearer. I was wrong, though. Age doesn't always mean that you understand something better. People have a heart, and the breath of God gives them wisdom." Even though he was young, his voice was strong. "I've heard every word and every argument. I've seen you prove Job wrong. Also, Job, you have made yourself look good instead of praising God's justice. No matter how serious your words were, they put your honor above the power of the Most High." The young man didn't curse, but spoke with fiery zeal. He thought the conversation needed more than just history or custom. "I kept quiet and listened with patience. Now I want you to listen to me too. I need to say something. These are not the words of someone in charge of my time, but the breath of the Eternal One." While the elders looked on in quiet, Elihu got ready to speak as a man who was angry and felt like he was being used by something bigger. His speech was both a reaction to Job and an attack on how other people had dealt with the pain of the righteous. It was no longer appropriate to be quiet. A voice of young people filled with respect began to rise. She drew in a deep breath. He could do it because of the silence. It was his turn now. He told her, "The time has come. I will now speak. Job, God is much bigger than any person. Why are you so set on arguing with him? He doesn't have to explain himself to you. No one can understand how powerful he is." But Elihu said that the Eternal One is not quiet, which is different from what Job thought. He does talk, in a lot of ways. It's just that we don't always notice. It's possible for him to speak to us in our dreams or in our vivid thoughts. He also talks when he is in pain, when the body is tired and the soul is weak. Elihu thought that pain could be used to save people. God can save people from evil through suffering, and he punishes him not because he is mean, but to save his soul from the depths of hell. He makes changes to save. He makes us humble by causing us pain. He said it again with conviction, God is not unfair. The Almighty does not do anything bad. He treats everyone based on what they've done. He doesn't judge based on looks, and he always makes the right choice. So Job, pay attention. Pay close attention. Don't use your human reasoning to try to figure out everything. Think about how great God is. When Elihu spoke, it wasn't just words that were heard. The air had changed in some way, as if the words which had been spoken by a person started to sound like they were from God. He then talked about how the Creator's glory can be seen in everything. Look around you, Job, and see the amazing things that are going on. Do you know how he keeps everything in order? How perfectly light moves through the clouds? Does the order of the sky make sense to you? The knowledge that keeps the sky stable? The young man's voice was smooth and swayed like the wind. Listen to the sound that comes from the home in heaven. He makes himself known. Thunder goes off before he arrives, and his voice is so strong that it shakes the skies. The words were almost like seeing things. He hides the light with clouds. Then there is the air, and something holy cuts through the sky. His light shines all the way to the moon and back, and even the chair shakes when he talks. His voice is pure royalty. Each line was an attempt to show what could not be seen. God does amazing things that we can't understand. He's really big. He is fair. He also doesn't just punish people when he punishes them. Even if we don't understand it, everything happens for a reason. It became clear that the Most High was there, not with your eyes, but with your heart. The mood that had been heavy with charges before now seemed to be getting ready for something bigger. Elihu wasn't just defending a case anymore. He was making way for a discovery. The young man told them, "Fear him. This is because he is so great and smart that it's hard to understand." The words seemed to have come straight from heaven. Job then stopped talking, not because they lost, but because they cared. Something was getting closer, being there. Sounds, a wind. Heaven was getting ready to talk. That is, not through people, but through God. Someone who had asked a question while in pain was about to get an answer. Not what he thought would happen, but something no one had ever thought of. After all the statements, arguments, and shaky decisions, the quiet that followed was not like other silences. The good news was that something big was coming. When Elihu talked about the storm, it wasn't just a natural event. It was the Holy Spirit itself coming in. And that's where the voice of God finally came through. In the middle of the storm. In the middle of the storm, the voice of God roared. You couldn't whisper it. It came like thunder that cut deep into your soul. Who is this person who hides advice with words they don't know? Get ready to be a man now. You will answer me when I ask you a question. Someone would now ask Job questions, since he had asked so many in the past. But these weren't normal questions. They were calls to think about how great God is. He asked, "Where were you when I built the earth? Please answer me if you are smart. Who measured how big it was? Who held it up for nothing?" This is why God led Job down a road that no one else had ever been on. Who blocked the sea with doors when it came out of the womb? When I told it, "This far you can go and no further. Your proud waves will be held back here." The questions kept coming, and each one got more in-depth than the last. Have you told the morning what to do? Do you know where the snow is kept? Have you seen the riches of hail that I save for times of trouble and war? The stars, the air, and the changing of the day and night were some of the things that God showed him. Can you tie the stars together? Can you break Orion's bonds? Do you know when each season starts and ends? Are you the one who tells the stars where to go? The questions came down from heaven with the same weight. Are you the one who makes the horse strong or dresses up its mane with majesty? Does the hawk fly because you are smart? Are you the one telling the eagle to build its nest high up? Then the Most High made Job think about things that were impossible for humans to rule. Look at Behemoth. I made him to look like you. His strength comes from his loins. Who can stand up to him? Are you going to use a hook to pull Leviathan out of the water? Are you going to put a rope through his nose? Will you promise him that he will always serve you? Not only did God's words have weight because of how powerful creation was, but they also made sense. How could Job ask the Creator to explain things if he couldn't even control a wild animal or the sky? From his small point of view, how could he understand timeless purposes? That's when Job's soul finally broke, not because he was rebelling, but because he gave up. Look, I'm not important. What else do I say? I covered my mouth with my hand. I spoke before, but I won't answer now. Do it twice, and I won't go on. He was done looking for answers. Just being with God was enough. The questions of heaven didn't need answers. They made people respect them. Job wasn't scolded for his pain. Instead, he was taken to a better place where faith gives way to wonder and the heart finds rest, not in answers, but in trust. Job had talked, just twice. There was nothing else to say, though. When the truth came out, what was once a soul full of questions turned into a broken spirit. Instead of giving him clear answers about why people suffer, God showed him who he is, which was even more important. That was enough. Job bowed down when he thought about how big what he had seen was. He was truly humble, not out of fear, but because he knew what he had done was right. Finally, he got it. He said with respect, "Now I know that you can do anything, and that none of your plans can fail." What I said was something no one could understand. What was clear was hidden by my words. I talked about things that were too big for me to understand. No longer did Job ask for answers. He wanted to be wise. I had only heard about you before. I heard accounts, stories, and reports. But now I can see you. I'm sorry for this. I feel terrible about myself. It's just dust and ashes under me. He didn't repent for secret sins. He did it because he was cocky and trying to figure out God's ways with limited reasoning. Now just being with him was enough for him. The who is now more important than the why. It was enough for him to know God, but Job wasn't the only one in the story. God then looked at his friends who had said bad things about him, and what he said was clear. Eliphaz, I'm angry with you and your two friends because you haven't said good things about me like my servant Job has. Job had been honest with God, even though he was in pain. The man asked, yes, but he looked, he screamed, but he stood still in front of him. With their prepared replies and quick judgments, his friends tried to protect God with cold arguments, which made the person who was already hurt even worse. Get 7 bulls and 7 rams and bring them to Job, the Most High said. My servant will pray for you if you bring a burnt offering. I'm going to listen to him so that you don't get what you deserve for the stupid things you said. It was a moment of truth. The 3 felt bad about what they did, but they did it anyway. They got the offerings ready and then went to see the man they were so sharply accusing. Job then showed a greatness that not many people have by forgiving them. Not with mean words or irony, but with prayer. Job spoke up for the people who had hurt him. In their place, he talked to God. God paid attention. His justice wasn't just about punishing people, it was also about making peace. It was when they chose to forgive that the story took a new turn. Not only did Job's pain show how honest he was, but so did his ability to show kindness. He not only lived through disaster, but he also reacted to it with faith, repentance, and finally kindness. When someone was wrongly accused, that person became a go-between for his friends and God, and with that action, things began to get better. But this repair was more than just physical. It brought back a sense of purpose, community, and direction. Job was not the same person. His pain had changed him, but his faith kept him going. God's silence was broken, and now heavenly justice showed up, not with judgment, but with kindness. That act of submission and forgiveness, when Job prayed for the people who had hurt him, was the start of the turnaround. There was no word from heaven or promise that could be heard. There was only the quiet answer of a God who knows what's in the heart. Then things that were broken started to get fixed. Jehovah, the same God who had let the test happen, now made up for everything Job had lost in a big way. Everything was fixed twice over. There were 14,000 sheep where there were only 7,000 before. There are now 6,000 horses instead of 3,000. There were twice as many horses and cows as before, 500 yoke. Every animal and resource that had been killed, stolen, or used up was now returned, and the Most High gave twice as much. But the divine gift wasn't just for things. God also fixed up his family. Job had 7 boys and 3 girls once more. These girls not only got their father's love, but they also got something unusual for the time, a fortune from their brothers. That was a sign of respect and pride. The first one was called Jemima, the second Kezia, and the third Keren Hapuch. People say that no other women in the world were as pretty as Job's children. Now, God's favor was overflowing, not just in words, but also in actions. For honor, beautiful. For the law, Job, who had cried out from the ashes, could now see a fresh start. The years went by, but this time they had a different feel. Job lived for another 140 years, long days of peace that were not easy, but were full of meaning. He watched his kids grow up, then his grandkids, then his great-grandchildren, and even the 4th generation. His life was a tapestry that was stitched together by pain and ended with grace and fullness. He was at peace when he closed his eyes for the last time. He died old, happy and whole. He was happy not because his life had been easy, but because it had been saved. The trial didn't break him, it made him stronger. He knew God in a way that not many people do in the end. Job's story isn't just about pain, it's also about finding out the truth. It proves that God is in charge, even when we don't understand how he works. Some of the time, that pain is not discipline, but a way to get closer to the Eternal One. Job's faith wasn't perfect. He cried out, asked questions, and gave up. But it was real. And it was this honest faith, even though it was hurt, that God liked. He doesn't want people to remember lines. He wants people with honest hearts. This story shows us that God will remember our loyalty, even when it is put to the test in the hottest fire. That serious questions are heard when they are brought to the Creator, even if solutions don't come right away. That hope can grow again, even when it's buried by pain. And most importantly, it tells us that bad things can be turned around. When you regret, you can heal, and that the Redeemer lives, even when it looks like everything is lost. And he will rise above the dust, the ashes, and the rubble to fix, explain, and bring back what looked like it could never be fixed. Job saw God. That was enough. May our faith, like his, find in God not only a way to make sense of things, but also a presence that heals, restores, and saves. May Job's story tell you that no pain is pointless, and that God is still writing books of healing. If this lesson spoke to you, please say Amen in the comments, like this video, and follow us. There are a lot more facts that can change your life. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.